Good morning. Today is Friday, October 4th, 2024. This is the Urban Hope Refuge Morning Devotions. We are continuing our reading today from the 2024 Daily Bible Reading Guide published by the American Bible Society. And before I begin my reading, I want to thank all of our readers this week for being a part of this morning devotion ministry. And I started out on Monday, and I noticed after the broadcast that there was a person by the name of Annie from Pakistan, India. Welcome, Annie, to Morning Devotions, and welcome, Pakistan, to Morning Devotions. Today, we are continuing our reading under the theme God's Guiding Word, Peace and Justice. Today, I am reading Psalm 11, and it's rather brief, so I'm going to read it in the King James Version as well as in the New Living Translation. King James Version, chapter 1. In the Lord put I my trust. How say ye to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For lo, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privately shoot at the upright in heart. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids try the children of men. The Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence his soul hateth. Upon the wicked he shall rain snares, fire, and brimstone, and an horrible tempest. This shall be the portion of their cup. For the righteous Lord loveth righteousness. His countenance doth behold the upright. And in the New Living Translation, Psalm 11 says, I trust in the Lord for protection. So why do you say to me, flee like a bird to the mountains for safety? The wicked are stringing their bows and fitting their arrows on the bowstrings. They shoot from the shadows at those whose hearts are right. The foundations of law and order have collapsed. What can the righteous do? But the Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord still rules from heaven. He watches everyone closely, examining every person on earth. The Lord examines both the righteous and the wicked. He hates those who loves violence. He will rain down blazing coals and burning sulfur on the wicked, punishing them with scorching winds. For the righteous Lord loves justice. The virtuous will see his face. This concludes the reading in the New Living translation. This passage of scripture to me seems so appropriate for the times in which we are living today, particularly for us here in the United States, as we are facing a presidential election that will govern us for the next 4 years. But America is not the only nation that is faced with chaos and challenges and turmoil. It is worldwide. So that is why I feel that the background of Psalm 11 was written, and it is appropriate for us even today. It was written by David when he was tempted, not sure exactly which temptation was confronting him, because as you know, in the life of David, he had many. But it was for sure when he was tempted to flee from his enemies and distrust God. That's what he was confronted with, whatever the situation was. But David's response when he was in that particular situation, David resisted the temptation. He was trusting in God, and he remained firm. He believed that God cared for his people, and that God cared for righteousness, and that godly authority cannot be lost without catastrophic consequences. That's where we are today. That's what we are confronted with today, just as David was then. So the theme of the Psalms is that godly people should stand firm against evil and trust the Lord. It also shows how to respond to the erosion of godly authority. I think those of us here in the United States, and I reference it that way because this morning devotions is worldwide, and I want us to understand that our nation here in America was built on a religious foundation. In God we trust. And there seems to be a tremendous erosion of that. But it shows how we should respond to the erosion, even of godly authority. So Psalm 11 is a reminder that even when foundations crumble, God's truth is still valid, and the eternal foundations are still intact. When we listen to the most powerful leader of the world, cannot speak truth, cannot tell the truth, cannot face reality, cannot recognize the very foundational and basic principles of God. God's truth is still valid, and the eternal foundations are intact. The opening lines of the Psalms that we just read, it's a rhetorical question. It was not requiring an answer, but the question needed to be asked. Whether through the advice of David's counselors or of his own fear, David is being tempted to flee in terror. His response to that situation in essence, was to say, how can I do that? How can I do that? How can I flee? How can I run? David realized that godly authority cannot be lost without catastrophic consequences. Saints, that's what we're faced with today. In so many areas, people are trying to deny the godly authority, and we are faced with all of these consequences. Verse 3 of this psalm, which says, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? In the New Living Testament, its translation, it said, the foundations of law and order have collapsed. What can the righteous do? The reality is that this third verse of Psalm 11 has been applied to every culture, to family, to government, and it's even applied to our personal faith. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? If the most crucial, important building blocks of our lives, of our culture, if they are dissolved, there simply is nothing to be done that's going to avoid disaster. And that's what Psalm 1 through 3, chapter 11, verses 1 through 3 is telling us. But David, instead of the urge to run away, David celebrates the fact that God is sovereign and that God is aware of everything. He knows, David knew, that God cared deeply for his people and for righteousness. What does Psalm 11:6 mean? David prays for vengeance on his enemies, not through his own hands, but from God. So Psalm 11 is a psalm that discusses justice and peace and can be a source of comfort and guidelines for us even today if we're struggling. It emphasizes the following principles of the sovereignty of God as I come to closure. First, God's righteousness. Psalm 11 states that the Lord is righteous. He loves justice, and he will rain fury of coals and burning sulfur on the wicked. Principle 2, God's watchful presence. The psalm declares that God, as a watchful presence who sides with goodness and justice, and who sees and provides for his people. Principle 3, God's judgment. The psalm suggests that there is a day of judgment to come, and I believe it, and so should you. The day is going to come when God will make rain upon the wicked, just as he said that he would. He said, vengeance is mine, I will repay. But then, the next principle, there is God's mercy. The final verse of this psalm suggests that the righteous will see the face of God. And God is a merciful liberator. The psalm tells us to trust in God. It can teach people to trust God in the midst of crisis and to understand a crisis is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is a period of testing or discipline. But finally, as I close, it encourages us to stand firm against evil. The general theme of Psalm 11 is that godly people can trust the Lord. So they should stand firm against evil. The foundations are being destroyed. Many times in our lives, we say to each other, things are so different. They are not like they used to be. But listen, God stands on his word. He loves the righteous and he loves righteousness. Now let me encourage you to pray your way through the day, walk with the King, and be a blessing.